At DSW, we ask the important questions, like, what shoes are you going to wear? Whether you're prepping for wedding season, festival season, or just planning the ultimate vacay, the right shoes can make or break an RSVP. So own the moment. You've got big plans, and we've got just the shoes, at the perfect price, of course. Get ready to get ready with Designer Shoe Warehouse. Head to your DSW store or dsw.com today, and let us surprise you.
You're listening to this podcast, so I know you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact you may not know yet. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. Pop over to progressive.com, answer some questions, and you'll get a quick quote with discounts that are easy to come by. In fact, 99% of their auto customers earn at least one discount. Visit progressive.com and see if you can enjoy a little cash back. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.
Voices for Justice is a podcast that uses adult language and discusses sensitive and potentially triggering topics, including violence, abuse, and murder. This podcast may not be appropriate for younger audiences. All parties are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Some names have been changed or omitted per their request or for safety purposes. Listener discretion is advised. My name is Sarah Turney, and this is Voices for Justice. Today I'm discussing the case of Leigh Occhi. When we think about a child disappearing, our minds usually go to the places parents warn their kids about: a lonely street, a dark parking lot, somewhere outside of the safety of home. But Leigh Occhi's case challenges that assumption in a deeply unsettling way. Because on the morning of August 27, 1992, 13-year-old Leigh disappeared from her own home. What investigators found inside was evidence that something had gone terribly wrong. More than 30 years later, there are still no definitive answers, only a trail of evidence, conflicting theories, and many haunting questions. This is the case of Leigh Occhi. Thursday, August 27, 1992 was supposed to be a big day for 13-year-old Leigh Maureen Occhi. That afternoon, she was going to an open house at a new middle school where she'd be starting 8th grade in just a few days. Then her family was going to be treating her to a special dinner at Taco Bell. And there was something really important that would make the day even bigger. This would be the first time Leigh would be left home all by herself while her mom Vicky went to work. But there was something standing in the way of making this an exciting milestone for Leigh. Unfortunately, Hurricane Andrew was making its way toward where she lived in Tupelo, Mississippi. At this point, it was really the remnants of Hurricane Andrew. It had struck South Florida as a Category 5 and Louisiana as a Category 3. And Leigh was just terrified of storms. So much so that according to David Lohr's reporting for the Huffington Post, she'd slept in her mom's bed the night before because she was so scared. But again, by the next morning, it seemed to have calmed down a bit. Leigh and Vicky ate breakfast together while chatting about the upcoming day. Then, at around 7:35 a.m., Vicky left the house to head to work. But according to Vicky, when she got to work at the manufacturing company Leggett & Platt, she just had this uneasy feeling about leaving Leigh alone during the storms. So, at around 8:30 a.m., she called the house to check on her. Now, Vicky and Leigh had developed this sort of code when calling. Vicky would let the phone ring twice, then hang up and call back. This was pretty much her way of telling Leigh that it was okay to pick up the phone. So she uses their system, but Leigh doesn't pick up the phone. She calls again, nothing. She hangs up and tries again for a third time. Still nothing. So she tries just one more time, and Leigh still doesn't pick up the phone. At this point, Vicky's uneasy feeling about leaving Leigh home alone turns into panic. She works about 1.5 miles away, so she leaves immediately to make sure that Leigh's okay. As she turns onto their street, Honey Locust Drive, her heart just sinks. She sees that the garage door is wide open, and the motor light for it is on, as if someone may have just been in there. So according to Vicky, she runs to the door, which is unlocked. She opens it and begins yelling for Leigh. But aside from the sounds of the storm outside, the house is silent. She begins making her way through the house looking everywhere she can for Leigh. But then she sees it. There's blood. A pool of it is on the carpet in the hallway, and more is spattered on the walls. Just before 9 a.m., Vicky calls the Tupelo Police to report Leigh missing, and what also appears to be a serious assault. This episode of Voices for Justice is sponsored by Quince. Does anyone else feel like August is the Sunday of summer? It's the perfect time to hit reset before the autumn rush, and for me, that always starts with my wardrobe. Quince proves you don't need a crowded closet to look incredible. You just need the right pieces. Quince specializes in effortless, high-quality essentials, like ultra-soft organic cotton and premium Mongolian cashmere sweaters. They are beautifully tailored, built to last, and transition seamlessly from morning meetings to dinner. I just got back from a week-long trip, and let me tell you, about half my suitcase was Quince. I keep reaching for their linen pants and dresses, especially in the warmer weather. But I can tell you that it's not just apparel. I've tried their jewelry, their candles, and most recently the Supergoop sunscreen and their collagen powder. Both are amazing. Quince really does have a little bit of everything for everyone. Upgrade your everyday. Download the Quince app for app-exclusive offers. Or go to quince.com/justice. Get free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada and the UK too. That's QUINCE.com/justice.
Mitty knows that just when you thought you had your body all figured out, bam, perimenopause. Suddenly, your hormones are raging like it's puberty round 2. You're waking up at 3 a.m. and dealing with mood swings that have mood swings. Your ears are itchy, your jeans don't fit, you need an industrial-sized fan to cool down, and you've suddenly forgotten the word for microwave. Most women in perimenopause don't know that they are, even though it can last for 10 years. They also don't realize that most of their symptoms are treatable. That's why we built Mitty Health. Mitty is a company built by women who've been through it. Our menopause experts actually listen and treat the real symptoms you're feeling. Your symptoms aren't just common, they're treatable. Schedule a visit with a menopause specialist at Mitty. Visit joinmidi.com. Specialist-led care, virtual visits, insurance eligible. Midlife needs Mitty. Results may vary. Medications prescribed only if clinically appropriate based on a consultation with a clinician. Insurance coverage varies. Check with your plan for coverage.
After 13-year-old Leigh Occhi is reported missing from a horrific crime scene, the Tupelo Police Department gets there so quickly that the blood is still wet. Now, I don't say that for shock value. I say that because I want to emphasize how quickly all of this happened. Vicky left for work at about 7:35 a.m. She calls home to check on her daughter just about an hour later. And when Leigh doesn't pick up, she races home within minutes and finds this unimaginable scene where it's clear that Leigh has been seriously injured. Tupelo Police Detective, later turned Police Chief Bart Aguirre, has spoken a lot to the media over the years. In 2017, he did a long-form interview with the podcast Open, The Case of Leigh Occhi. It's hosted by Emma Kent and produced by the local news outlet, the Northeast Mississippi Daily Journal. He also spoke extensively with William Moore for AP News. But here's what he said. There was a pool of blood in the hallway adjacent to the kitchen. And on the kitchen doorframe, there was blood with hair embedded in it. This spatter on the doorframe was consistent with head trauma to someone who was about 5 feet tall, Leigh's height. And blood was found in other places around the home. In the primary bathroom, a pink substance was smeared across the counter. Aguirre believes that this is evidence someone may have tried to clean up the blood, though no rags or towels with blood on them were ever found inside the home. Leigh's nightgown was also crumpled up and thrown in the hamper. When it was pulled out, blood was found on it. Aguirre told Moore, quote, "Because it looked like the blood had dripped down onto her nightgown, you would think the injury had to be above the neck possibly." End quote. So this, along with the blood placement higher on the doorframe, made detectives worry that Leigh may have suffered a serious head injury. There was also a trail of blood that went from the hallway to the living room and towards the back door. Now, aside from the blood, nothing else really appeared to be out of order inside the house. Aguirre said that the house wasn't in disarray at all, and there was no sign of forced entry. But Vicky was adamant that Leigh would never open the door for someone she didn't know. If all the blood hadn't been there, it would have looked like Leigh simply walked out of her home. But Vicky did tell investigators that some items were missing from the house: an older sleeping bag, a pair of shoes, a new pair of underwear that Leigh had just gotten for her birthday, a pair of blue jeans, a t-shirt, and Leigh's reading glasses, which she wore almost every day. So that's what the scene looked like inside of the house. But of course, while investigators are processing the scene, there are patrol officers just outside of the home looking for any clues. They search a 10-foot wide ditch that ran east to west right next to the house. They also comb through about 80 acres of nearby open land on foot and on horseback. And bloodhounds were also brought in to aid in the search, but weren't able to pick up on a scent. Gary later told Emma Kent that the dog handlers told him that while it could have meant that Leigh hadn't been there, the heavy rain and strong winds from Hurricane Andrew may have altered their ability to properly sniff out anything. Detectives and officers also canvassed the neighborhood, but no one reported seeing anything odd that day. It seems like whatever happened inside of that home happened incredibly fast. As daylight faded into the dark of night, despite an exhaustive search, there was just no sign of Leigh. In the days that followed, investigators expanded their efforts while those who loved her faced the growing uncertainty of not knowing where she was or what happened to her. And that included Donald Occhi, Leigh's biological father. He and Vicky met in the late 1970s in California, while the two of them were both in the U.S. Army. They got married and got stationed in Honolulu, Hawaii. While there, Vicky gave birth to Leigh on August 21, 1979. But just 2 years later, they filed for divorce. Donald was eventually stationed in Germany, while Vicky took Leigh back to Tupelo, Mississippi, where her parents lived. Eventually, Vicky met and married her second husband, Barney Yarborough. And while growing up in Tupelo, it seems that Leigh may not have had the easiest time. A former classmate and friend, Bart Phelps, was also interviewed for the Open podcast, and he told reporter Emma Kent that while Leigh was very sweet, she didn't have a lot of friends, and she was really treated more like an outcast. But even so, it seems that Leigh was very loving and just wanted to make friends with everyone. One of her neighbors, a woman named Ellen, told the Open podcast that Leigh would come over to her house to chat and play with her dog, which didn't seem out of the ordinary at all. Leigh absolutely loved animals, especially horses and her cat named Smokey. Ellen told Kent about when Leigh was dropped off at home after attending a day camp activity and Vicky wasn't there. Leigh didn't want to be home alone, so she went over to Ellen's where she told her all about the new middle school that she would start attending in just a few days. She also asked if she could come by the following weekend to give her dog a bath, which Ellen agreed to. Then Leigh went back home to see if her mom was there. And based on our research for this episode, this seems to have been the last sighting of Leigh by anyone besides Vicky. During her interview with Emma Kent, Ellen also said that she was absolutely shocked when she learned that Leigh was missing. She didn't recall seeing anything strange or out of place, but she does admit that she was distracted while busy heading to work that morning. While those closest to Leigh were just trying to make sense of her sudden disappearance, her father Donald was now states away stationed in Virginia. And at first, he had no idea just how serious the situation was. He too sat down with Emma Kent for the Open podcast, and during his interview, he painted a very concerning picture of what things were like from his perspective. He remembers getting a call from Vicky about a day or two after the disappearance. He said that when she told him what happened, she said Leigh had run away, and didn't make any mention of the blood on the scene. By all accounts, he seemed very concerned. He kept calling Vicky to see if there were any updates. And eventually, on one of those calls, Vicky mentioned the blood that was found at the scene. After this, he was immediately granted a special leave from the Army and came to Tupelo. Not long after, Don, along with his new wife, got to work trying to find answers. They started where I think most parents of missing children do. They organized searches, and the citizens of Tupelo came out in droves to help. But what I do find really amazing in this case is that they were really supported by law enforcement as well. They even gave him locations to search based on tips they got. And in their more official searches, the Tupelo Police Department deployed helicopters to look by air. And while all of this is happening, the Mississippi State Crime Lab tested the blood that was found at the scene. At the time, they determined the blood was type O, the same as Leigh, though later DNA testing did definitively confirm that the blood was Leigh's. But despite all of this effort, investigators were hitting dead ends and couldn't figure out what happened to Leigh and who may have caused it. Very quickly, frustrations were growing. Just a week after her disappearance, the Northeast Mississippi Daily Journal ran the headline, quote, "Occhi case at standstill." But then, just when it seemed like the investigation was beginning to stall, two major clues came through that gave some renewed hope. 8 days after Leigh's disappearance, a college student working at McDonald's in Boonville, Mississippi, called to report a potential sighting. He saw a girl matching Leigh's description with a man in a blue truck in the drive-thru. However, detectives were able to track down the girl and discovered that it was not her. But what's so weird about this is that the second major lead also had a tie to Boonville, which this is about 30 miles north of Tupelo. And unlike the first lead, there was no question that this was connected to Leigh's disappearance. On September 9th, 1992, Vicki received a deeply unsettling package. It was addressed to B. Yarborough, her husband and Leigh's stepfather who she'd recently separated from. And the address for the home was misspelled. The street name was Honey Locust Drive. But instead of spelling honey the traditional way, Honey, they spelt it Hony. It was also listed as the return address, and on it were 6 stamps that had hearts with the word love on them. Inside of the package was just one item: Leigh's reading glasses. There was no ransom note, no demands, no other clues. Just those reading glasses that were missing from the house. Now at this point, the FBI was assisting in the case, and the envelope was sent to their crime lab for testing. But whoever sent it seems to have taken steps to conceal their identity. Water was used to stick the stamps and to seal the envelope. In the end, it appears that they weren't able to find any DNA on it at all. Or like I always say, if they have, they aren't telling the public that. But authorities were able to track down where it was sent from. You guys guessed it, it was Boonville, where that false sighting had happened just a few days before. Now, people have questioned if the glasses were meant to distract or throw off law enforcement. Bardaguerre told William Moore for the Washington Times, quote, "There was no ransom letter or anything like that came with those glasses. It was just those glasses. You would think if it was an actual kidnapping, you would have expected a little more to come along with that." End quote. This left investigators, and really all of us, with a lot of questions. Were the glasses meant to get detectives to believe that Leigh was still alive somewhere? Or was it done to create a wild goose chase? And why was it addressed to her stepfather who wasn't living there anymore? Well, all of those questions people had about Leigh's disappearance started to be directed towards those that were closest to her. And before long, rumors began to swirl about the very people who seemingly wanted to find her the most. This episode of Voices for Justice is sponsored by Smile Set. Is there something in your smile that you just keep thinking about fixing? Or maybe you're like me. I had braces when I was younger, wasn't great at wearing my retainer, and my teeth have shifted. That's why I was so excited to try a Smile Set. Smile Set can straighten your teeth for under $1,800. That's less than half the cost of traditional braces, and it's all done at home. Basically, it starts with an at-home impression kit. Then a licensed doctor reviews your case and builds your custom treatment plan, with your aligner shipped straight to you. And they monitor your progress remotely via the Smile Set app. They also have doctor check-ins available whenever you want. And they do offer nighttime-only aligners, so you can straighten your teeth while you sleep. I just did the at-home impression kit and sent it in. I am so excited to try this and get my teeth back to where they used to be. Over 2 million smiles have been fixed with this technology, and they do have a 30-day money-back guarantee, as well as monthly payments starting at just $89. Listeners of our show get an additional 35% discount when they go to smileset.com/justice. With this discount, you can get the smile of your dreams for under $1,300. Go to smileset.com/justice to get started. Smileset.com/justice. This episode of Voices for Justice is sponsored by Hers. If you've tried everything to lose weight and still feel stuck, this summer can be different. Weight Loss by Hers is designed to support you in reaching your goals, with access to an affordable range of FDA-approved GLP-1 medications, including the Wegovy pill and the Wegovy pen. Everything is 100% online through Hers. You'll connect with a licensed provider who will determine if treatment is even right for you. If prescribed, your medication is delivered right to your door. No insurance necessary. And it doesn't stop there. Weight Loss by Hers goes beyond medication by offering access to 24/7 messaging with your care team, and tons of in-app lifestyle and nutrition tips, like recipes, meal plans, fitness videos, sleep content, and more. Ready to reach your goals? Visit forhers.com/crime to get personalized, affordable care that gets you. That's forhers.com/crime. forhers.com/crime. Weight Loss by Hers is not available in all 50 states. Wegovy is the registered trademark of Novo Nordisk AS. To get started and learn more, including important safety information, Wegovy clinical study information, and restrictions, visit forhers.com. After the package containing only Leigh's reading glasses seemingly yielded no leads, the residents of Tupelo were confused and pretty upset. And this is really when people began to question if her mom, Vicky, or stepfather, Barney, had anything to do with what happened to Leigh. Now, both Vicky and Barney were extensively questioned by investigators. In 2017, the original lead detective on the case, Ronnie Thomas, spoke with William Moore for the Associated Press. During that, he said that Barney was cooperative, passed a polygraph test, and most importantly, had an alibi. He added that he also helped search for Leigh in the days after she disappeared. And on top of all of that, the former police chief, Bart Aguirre, told Emma Kent with the Open podcast that Barney was ruled out pretty early on. But unfortunately, I can't say the same for Leigh's mom, Vicky. In our research, we weren't able to find a public statement from law enforcement clearing her in this case. In that same reporting by William Moore for the Associated Press, former detective Ronnie Thomas said that Vicky was given 3 polygraph tests, 1 with the Tupelo Police Department and 2 through the FBI. On all 3 tests, she showed signs of deception. Now, we all know that polygraph tests are notoriously unreliable, but Vicky did give a statement to Alexis Weed with CNN about her failing those polygraph tests. Quote, "I couldn't tell you why. They measure changes in your body, and when your daughter has gone missing and they strap you up to things, I can't imagine anyone's body not reacting." End quote. Now, Aguirre says that Vicky has been cooperative with investigators and was not a suspect, but that she is still considered a person of interest. He told William Moore, quote, "You still can't eliminate her. There are still too many unanswered questions for Vicky. And I don't know if that is unusual for somebody to go off to work and say, well, I just left Leigh, but I'm going to call and check on her. Why check on her that soon after she just left her?" End quote. Over the years, people who knew Leigh have also shared some concerning stories about her home life. Her former 3rd grade teacher, Jan Key, also spoke with the Open podcast. During her interview, she recalled Leigh would sometimes come to school moody or sad. But whenever she was asked about it, Leigh would just brush it off by saying things like she was having a bad morning. She also said that she remembers Vicky being a very strict disciplinarian. There were even times Jan wouldn't even tell Vicky if Leigh got in trouble at school because she didn't want her to be disciplined too harshly. However, it is worth stating here that Jan said that while she heard Vicky would give Leigh spankings, she didn't see any outward signs of abuse. But people who knew Leigh during her childhood had some other concerning things they remembered. That old friend and classmate Bart Phelps also said that at one point, he posted on Facebook asking people to share any memories they had of Leigh, and multiple people commented that they remembered her showing up to school with bruises on her legs or a black eye. More than one classmate remembers her telling people that she got a black eye after being kicked in the face by a horse. Now, when specifically asked about those rumors, Vicki sent in a written statement to the Open podcast, stating, quote, "As I've stated before, her medical records were pretty clear where those came from, and I don't want to get into that again. She was hit in the nose with horse apples. It happened where a guy kept horses about a block away." End quote. But Vicki wasn't the only person close to Leigh that people were suspicious of. Even though law enforcement considered Barney cleared, others continued to revisit the stories and memories that surrounded his relationship with Leigh. Leigh's middle school boyfriend, Jordan Morse, said that Leigh once told him that she was locked out of the house because she made Barney mad. Jordan never met Barney, but he remembers that Leigh said that she was afraid of him because he would scream and yell at her. And another former childhood friend told the Open podcast that she remembers Leigh telling her that Barney would whip her and hit her all the time. Many people have spoken out about their feelings and suspicions towards Vicki and Barney, including Dawn, who has made it known that he questions them. When the host of the podcast 13, Jason Leigh Occhi, asked him directly what he thinks happened to his daughter, Dawn stated, quote, "I believe she was murdered, accidentally or intentionally, inside her house. Maybe somebody got real mad at her and knocked her against the doorframe into the kitchen, and she died from it." End quote. Now, Barney passed away in 1996, and therefore can no longer speak for himself. Vicki, on the other hand, has always been adamant that she didn't harm her daughter in any way. In fact, she's been very vocal about who she believes may have harmed Leigh. And this person's criminal history has made people wonder if she might be onto something.
Mitty knows that just when you thought you had your body all figured out, bam, perimenopause. Suddenly, your hormones are raging like it's puberty round 2. You're waking up at 3 a.m. and dealing with mood swings that have mood swings. Your ears are itchy, your jeans don't fit, you need an industrial-sized fan to cool down, and you've suddenly forgotten the word for microwave. Most women in perimenopause don't know that they are, even though it can last for 10 years. They also don't realize that most of their symptoms are treatable. That's why we built Mitty Health. Mitty is a company built by women who've been through it. Our menopause experts actually listen and treat the real symptoms you're feeling. Your symptoms aren't just common, they're treatable. Schedule a visit with a menopause specialist at Mitty. Visit joinmidi.com. Specialist-led care, virtual visits, insurance eligible. Midlife needs Mitty. Results may vary. Medications prescribed only if clinically appropriate based on a consultation with a clinician. Insurance coverage varies. Check with your plan for coverage.
Hi, it's Sierra Miller. I can't wait for you to check out my new collection of shoes and accessories at Designer Shoe Warehouse. If you love shoes as much as I do, then trust me, I got you. From cute sneakerinas to the perfect flip-flops to stunning heels, these shoes are all style, no drama. It's a girl's girl summer, and DSW has just the shoes. Shop the Sierra Miller collection right now at your DSW store or dsw.com.
Oscar McKinley Kearns, who most people knew by the name Mike, was a Sunday school teacher and Vacation Bible School staff member at Holy Trinity Lutheran Church in Tupelo, where Leigh would attend with her family. And that wasn't the only proximity he had to Leigh. He and Leigh also rode horses at the same stable off North Thomas Street in Tupelo. And he didn't live too far away, just more than a mile from the Honey Locust home. But what makes people look at Kearns isn't just that he was around Leigh, it's his very concerning behavior and criminal activity after she went missing. A former church leader spoke to the 13 podcast and recalled something pretty strange. They said that after Leigh went missing, Kearns began telling people that her body had been placed in a barn belonging to a doctor in town. Now, this barn was searched by law enforcement and nothing was found. But after that, Kearns began saying that Leigh was buried in the basement of the church. The church was going through some renovations to build out a new basement, and this church leader remembers Kearns said to him that Leigh was buried and covered in a hole down there before the concrete was covered. I get it, this is a lot of speculation and a lot of stories, but here is where Kearns' behavior becomes undeniable. About 9 months after Leigh went missing, Kearns drove to Memphis and kidnapped a young girl. He showed up at her house and lured her out under the guise that he'd be bringing her to school. Then he sexually assaulted her and dropped her off at school, where she promptly reported him. Thank goodness he was swiftly found and arrested. He pleaded guilty to rape and was sentenced to 24 years in prison, but with 16 years suspended, meaning he really only had to serve 8. However, according to reporting by William Moore for AP, he was released in October 1997 after serving less than 4 years, which is honestly so upsetting. But many people have pointed out the similarities this crime had to Leigh's disappearance. Not only was she also a young girl home alone, but Kearns had met her at the Holy Trinity Lutheran Church, the same church he knew Leigh from. And once Kearns was out of prison, his violence continued. In 1999, about a year and a half after his release, he kidnapped a couple and sexually assaulted the wife in front of her husband. He was caught again and sentenced to 20 years this time. While incarcerated, law enforcement attempted to talk to him multiple times about Leigh's disappearance, but he was never cooperative. And Aguirre said that at one point, it seemed like Kearns was almost toying with investigators. He agreed to talk to them and take a polygraph, but only if his lawyer approved of it, which of course they did not. So detectives were never able to get any sort of information from him, and eventually Kearns was released in 2019 and passed away in May of 2021. After his death, Vicky told William Moore with the Daily Journal, quote, "I only hope that maybe he talked to someone in his family before he died, or maybe talked to somebody in jail. You always hear about jail confessions." End quote. Kearns may have died without providing the answers investigators hoped for, but Leigh's case was never forgotten, and at one point, investigators believe they'd even found her. Just over a year after her disappearance, in November 1993, the Monroe County Coroner's Office announced that the remains belonging to Leigh Occhi had been discovered by a farmer beside a soybean field about 15 miles away from Tupelo. Apparently, the coroner's office compared a recovered skull to Leigh's dental records and found it to be a match. But then, just 2 days later, they retracted that announcement. Which seems like such a huge screw-up. But after further testing on more bones, they concluded that the remains actually belonged to 27-year-old Pollyanna Sue Keith. She had been reported missing from Shannon, Mississippi in March of 1993. How this happens, you guys, I do not know. But in regards to Pollyanna, unfortunately, there's not a lot of information out there about her disappearance or cause of death. While I have to hope that that discovery gave one family some closure, it was obviously very painful for those who loved Leigh. Really, as of recording this episode, it seems like the biggest development in this case was the package with Leigh's glasses. But that doesn't mean that they've given up on ever finding answers. Over the years, law enforcement has continued to conduct searches, including one in 2015, where they re-examined the same ditch they looked at the day she disappeared. This ditch was really just a spot of a man-made creek to help with flood control. Back in August of 1992, when Leigh went missing, it was drained for cleaning and construction. Detectives have wondered if Leigh was possibly placed there in a shallow grave before the water was brought back in. So in 2015, the FBI cleared it out and brought search dogs in. Now, as far as we know, nothing was found, but this is still an area of interest. A recent search was done in January of 2025. Local news WLBT3 reported agents wearing official FBI and Mississippi Bureau of Investigation shirts digging near a drainage ditch that runs near Honey Locust Drive. And this time they actually released a statement. In part, it read, quote, "On January 29, 2025, the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation's Cold Case Unit, in collaboration with the Tupelo Police Department and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, conducted a search near Honey Locust Drive in Tupelo, Mississippi, as a part of the ongoing investigation into the 1992 disappearance of Leigh Occhi. While findings from the search cannot be disclosed at this time, investigators remain committed to following all leads and gathering information related to the case. No further comments will be made at this time." End quote. However, in May 2025, Wayne Herford with WTVA 9 News reported that Mississippi State forensic anthropologist Jesse Goliath, who was there participating in that search, said investigators still believe that Leigh's remains were on the property. So, like I always say, take that for what you will. And it really seems like they are trying so hard in this case, you guys. In recent years, the Tupelo Police Department has turned to advancements in DNA technology to possibly get answers. Tupelo Police Sergeant Cassidy Jumper told, again, Mr. William Moore with now the Daily Journal that original pieces of evidence were resubmitted to various labs in hopes of collecting genetic material that had previously been missed. The Tupelo Police Department has also said that they were able to build out a DNA profile for Leigh using blood found on her nightgown as well as her baby teeth. This profile has been uploaded to CODIS, but at the time of this recording, if there has been a match, that information has not been released to the public. More than 3 decades after Leigh vanished, the search for answers has never truly ended. In October of 2024, Leigh was legally declared dead after Vicki and Donald filed a petition to have it done in accordance with state law. And on October 14, 2024, a Lee County Chancellor signed an order officially declaring Leigh Marine Occhi deceased. That day, Vicki spoke with William Moore and said, quote, "I just decided that I wanted to do it. I felt it was time to do it. It has been 32 years." End quote. But the fight for justice for Leigh is far from over. Which brings me right to our call to action. Please share Leigh's story. More than 3 decades have passed since she disappeared from her home in Tupelo, Mississippi. Time has gone on, memories have faded, and some people linked to this case are no longer here. But of course, Leigh still deserves justice. Someone, somewhere, remembers something that they thought was too small to matter. A conversation, a strange comment, a detail that didn't seem important in 1992, but could mean everything today. We know that cold cases are often solved because someone finally speaks up, and maybe sharing Leigh's case will push someone to do so. Leigh was so much more than just a missing child. She was a little girl who loved animals, looked forward to starting a new school, and had her whole life ahead of her. Leigh deserved the chance to grow up, and she still deserves justice just as much as she did on the day she disappeared. So please share her story. Even after all these years, there are investigators who continue to search. There are detectives who will follow these leads. And there are so many people who continue to hope. As a reminder, 13-year-old Leigh Marine Occhi was last seen on August 27, 1992, at her home on Honey Locust Drive in Tupelo, Mississippi. Leigh is a white female who at the time of her disappearance was approximately 4'10" and 95 pounds, with blonde hair and hazel eyes. She also has a strawberry birthmark at the base of her skull, small scars on her right leg, and bumps on the skin of both of her knees. Anyone with information is asked to contact the Tupelo Police Department at 662-841-6491 or Crime Stoppers of Northeast Mississippi at 1-800-773-8477. But, as always, thank you, I love you, and I'll talk to you next time. Voices for Justice is hosted and produced by me, Sarah Turney, and is a Voices for Justice media original. This episode contains writing and research assistance by Jessica Quaz. If you love what we do here, please don't forget to rate, follow, and review the show in your favorite podcast player. It's an easy and free way to help us and help more people find these cases in need of justice. Welcome to the Secret After Show. The studio doors open and our emotional support puppies, Popcorn and Heber, are in the room. Let's go right into this case. I think one of the craziest things for me was how quickly this all happened. How investigators got there and the blood was still wet. I really don't know what to think. I'm not going to lie to you guys. But it does seem that investigators work this case thoroughly from the beginning. And despite everything, that is a blessing. Now, I think one of the biggest places of hope in this case is really that package, her glasses. I just have to believe that even with the most precautions in the world, something can come of that. It feels like the biggest clue in this case that we also have the least amount of information about. I mean, obviously, whoever had those glasses did something horrible to Leigh. So I just hope that they are using every resource possible. MVAC, what can we do to get these items retested if they haven't already? Now, the last thing I had on my list here was Oscar McKinley Kearns only serving 4 years for raping a child, you guys. 4 years. These things drive me insane because, of course he got out after basically a slap on the wrist, only 4 years, and went out and harmed somebody else. It just infuriates me because I feel like we don't take harming children or sexual assault in general very seriously in this country until they do it multiple times. So that was just one thing that really, really stuck with me. I mean, honestly, it feels like this whole case is so infuriating, and it really does pull you in a lot of different directions as to what could have happened. Now, I also have to say, I just thought of this, you guys. This was not on my list. The quote from Gary, where he's talking about, why would Vicky call home so soon after leaving Leigh? I put it in there because it's important to understand what law enforcement thinks of this case. But personally, if I'm leaving a kid home alone and I have a feeling that something could be wrong, I don't see any harm in just calling home. I don't know. I'm not a professional. I think that quote just kind of stuck out to me because I don't think that's odd behavior. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think it's odd? Let me know on social media. Now, on to media discrepancies, which, there were some, right? You run into the normal, what time did this actually happen? Was it 8:30? Was it 9 a.m.? It seems like it was shortly before 9 a.m. All those regular things. But I think the harder thing to keep track of was, who told which podcast and which reporter what. Because there were a ton of people talking in this case, and sometimes they would say slightly different things to different outlets or different people. So that was one of the biggest barriers in this case, was just keeping track of all those statements. Now on to our heroes of the episode. Number 1 is the people of Tupelo. They really did rally around this family. And Leigh's father, Don, did speak about, how highly he thought of these people because of how much they supported him. I didn't mention this in the episode, it just, didn't fit anywhere naturally, but he said that Leigh's church even raised money to cover the cost of his hotel while he stayed in town. Those little things just, mean so much to families. It just takes one worry off their back while they're going through the unimaginable. And you guys, I have to give it up to William Moore, who I know I said his name so much, but I just wanted to give credit where credit was due. He has been reporting on this case, you guys, for decades across so many different outlets. Unless there's 2 different William Moores, it appears that this same gentleman has been really sticking with Leigh's case for so long and doing some of the best reporting we could find. So William Moore, if you're out there, which it sounds like you are, you make one of our heroes of this episode for doing excellent reporting across numerous outlets across decades. Shout out to you. Now, I also have to say, the many podcasts that we mentioned were also heroes of this episode. Like I said, it seemed like through all these different outlets, we were piecing together these statements that they were giving. So shout out to everyone, all the podcasts, William Moore, everybody who got those interviews, because they were extremely helpful in building this episode. Now on to our segment of hope. This comes from People. I feel like I'm getting a lot of articles from People lately. They've been on top of these segments of hope for us. This was from August of this year and was written by Madison E. Goldberg. The title reads, Man Charged in Connection with the Murder of His Pregnant Wife in 1988 Cold Case. It appears that Joel Bremer has been charged with second-degree murder of his pregnant wife, Rana Bremer, who died in 1988. The article reads, Joel reported Rana missing when she disappeared in 1988 and was granted a divorce from her in 1990. A year later, in 1991, the Greene County Sheriff's Office received a skull from an anonymous sender, which was then handed to the University of Colorado for testing. 6 years later, in 1997, investigators declared Rana dead. And then several years later, in 2001, they determined that the skull belonged to her. Now, it looks like the case has been opened and closed a few times throughout the years. But in November 2024, detectives with the CCSO once again reopened the case, this time collaborating with a documentary team. The investigation led them to Iowa and Nebraska, ultimately circling back to a DNA sample collected in 1989 that now generated a DNA profile with the help of modern technology, tying Joel to the crime. Joel was indicted on July 4th and was arrested in Kansas City by the U.S. Marshal Service on July 31st, per News Nation. He was then extradited to Christian County. His first court appearance was on Monday, August 3rd, and he's being held on a $200,000 bond. I thought this made a great segment of hope for Leigh's case, because I think this is exactly how we're seeing these older cases get solved. It's a renewed interest, usually mixed with some older DNA that they have well preserved, and then boom, they have a solve. Now, of course, this man has not been found guilty, I will say that, but it does appear that this family at least has some more answers. As always, thank you, I love you, and I'll talk to you next time.
You might need MIDI if you ever hairsprayed your bangs into a waterfall, layered slouch socks, tied a scrunchie to the bottom corner of your t-shirt, or tried to go for a run with a CD player. If this took you down memory lane, you might need MIDI. Perimenopause can start 10 years before you actually go through menopause. So for some women, that can be as early as 35. Nobody ever told you that? Well, nobody told us either. That's why we built MIDI. If you're experiencing symptoms like night sweats, weight gain, or just generally don't feel like yourself anymore, you may be in perimenopause. But here's some good news. With the right care, these symptoms are treatable. Book a virtual visit with a menopause specialist at MIDI. Visit joinmidi.com to schedule with an expert who gets it. Specialist-led care, virtual visits, insurance eligible. Midlife needs MIDI. Results may vary. Medications prescribed only if clinically appropriate based on a consultation with a clinician. Insurance coverage varies. Check with your plan for coverage.
You're listening to this podcast, so I know you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact you may not know yet. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. Pop over to Progressive.com, answer some questions, and you'll get a quick quote with discounts that are easy to come by. In fact, 99% of their auto customers earn at least one discount. Visit Progressive.com and see if you can enjoy a little cash back. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.